Viewer discretion is advised.
Well, everything looks peaceful today, and I think that for today, I think this is the first time I've ever done a review, especially one like this. What do you think, Sonic? I say we should go for it, Cole, because this review is the best thing for you, because it was requested by Macanary76. Is this correct, Cole? No, Sonic, that's not how it happened. Besides, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was the best film that ever came out, and I believe this is going to be a great review. So let's get started now, shall we? Hey guys, what are you up to? Hey Ash, we were just going to review Who Framed Roger Rabbit. What do you say? Are you up for it? Sure, I would love to review this movie with you guys because it sounds like a good film. That's good to hear. Alright. For those of you who are watching this, who have seen this film, please stay tuned for this review. But whoever has not seen this film, I would strongly suggest you should skip ahead if you've not seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Cole, why did you tell the audience to skip ahead if they have not seen this film? Because I think you're just doing what you can, right? Well, yeah, Sonic, because I think it was best to let the audience know that I don't think that some of them have seen this film, and I believe everyone else has. So let's get started, shall we? Well, alright. To start off the film, it all started where we take us straight to an intro of a cartoon, it looks like, of Arcade Maroon cartoons, when Roger Rabbit was babysitting Baby Herman at the time. And during that time, when Baby Herman's mother went out, it all started where Roger was talking about his family, and Baby Herman wanted to get a cookie. And as he kept talking about his family, Baby Herman escaped his baby crater at the time. Well, during that time, when he escaped his baby crater, he looked up on the fridge, and he saw a jar of cookies. While Roger continued to talk about his 17th cousin, then he looked at the crater, and he wasn't there at the time. Well, during that time, Roger just realized what was happening, and then he ran straight to the kitchen. And during the chase, there was a roller that was used for cooking, and during that time, Roger kept slipping trying to get Baby Herman, and then that chase continued on, and then he went straight into the oven. Well, during that chase, during the oven, baby Herman looked up during the time when he looked up at the freezer wanting to get some cookies. His head accidentally went into the sink as he kept on trying to grab the cookies, but when Rodger came out, his tail was on fire. And during the... You're it, Mega Man! I tagged you! No, you're it, Astro, because you never touched me to begin with. Astro? Astro! What are you doing? Astro! Oh! Uh-oh. I'm sorry about that, Cole. I didn't mean to... I'm so sorry. Astro, you know the rules about playing tag in the house. Oh, yeah, the rules were there for a reason. We are so sorry about that, Cole. It's alright, Astro. And Mega Man, just play outside when you're playing tag. What a couple of silly willies, but alright. Where were we, Sonic? What part was I talking about earlier? Where the part where Rodger's tail was on fire? Oh yeah, thanks, Sonic. Well, during that time when Rodger's tail was set on fire, there was where Baby Herman left the sink running and the bar of soap was on the ground, and then Rodger slipped. That was where the soap kicked him right in his butt, and he grabbed the clock. And then Rodger slipped on the soap and his fingers hit the plug, and then his head kept hitting the wall, and then everything fell on his head at the time. Well, during that, even the hot sauce came in and landed right onto the mouth of the coffee container, and then coming in was hot sauce while Baby Herman was trying to grab the cookies, and then Rodger exploded and then went right into the steam table after that. And when Baby Herman was about to achieve his goal and when about grabbing the cookies, and that's when Rodger came out and he says, "I'm here, baby." Ah! Well, that all started where right after when Baby Herman made it to the top of the fridge, all the knives launched and the plunger went right into the toaster. And that's where Rodger said it, Sonic. But you got half there right. And out of everything, the plunger launched itself out of the toaster. It hit Rodger right in the face. While Baby Herman was trying to get the cookie out of the cookie jar. While he was on the bread. And then Rodger launched himself out from the steam table. And when he was flying, then his mouth hit the vacuum. And he was starting to blow up like a balloon. And then when Baby Herman finally got a cookie, Rodger launched himself all over the kitchen, and then his body hit the bottom of the fridge. While during that, he hit the bottom of the fridge while struggling, and then Baby Herman fell right onto Rodger's stomach. And then Rodger picked up the fridge, and when he picked up Baby Herman, knowing he was okay and he was safe, then the fridge fell back on top of his head. And then after that, that led to realization in the real world, and the director was screaming, "Cut!" And again he said it in fury, upset out of everything. And Baby Herman was so upset about it, wondering what was wrong with that take. The director was happy with Baby Herman's performance, but instead he knew Rodger blew his lines, and he asked him about the Tweeting Birds during that problem that he had. And then that was where the director pointed out to where the script said it, where rabbit gets clump, rabbit seeing stars, not birds, stars. That's what he said. He was asking to call for the playback, and he got so upset, and that's where Baby Herman got so upset he went to his trailer to take a nap. And that's where it led to where the director couldn't take any more of it, where he ordered the staff to clean up the setup and get him out of the fridge, even to lose the light, and now all about the lunch. Then Rodger kept pleading with the director to hit the refrigerator on his head one more time, and he gave him 23 more times already. And then he says, "I can take it, don't worry about me." And the director wasn't worried about him. The only thing he was worried about was the refrigerator itself. Then Rodger kept hitting himself in the head to try to give him stars, to tell him to look, as he kept pleading with him at the time. Well, during that time, on the set was Eddie Valiant, played by the late great Bob Hoskins. And during that scene, Eddie Valiant was so upset at Toons, out of everything in between, that was until he went to go see R.K. Maroon. And during that scene, R.K. Maroon's executive assistant tried to introduce him to Eddie Valiant, but then that was until he needed a minute when they were reviewing one of the cartoons that they were looking at. And afterwards, that was when they had their conversation and was introduced to each other. And during that time, that was until he asked him about show business. And during the whole scene, they talked about 50 grand over the latest Baby Herman cartoon and asked him why he couldn't keep his work on his lines. And he asked him why out of everything in between. And the answer he gave him was one too many refrigerators dropped on his head, but then he explained to him that he was a toon, that you can drop anything you want in his head, he'll shake it off. You break his heart, you hurt his feelings, goes to pieces just like you and me. And during that scene, he handed him a newspaper about Rodger's wife, Jessica Rabbit. And during the whole scene, that was until Eddie Valiant was wondering what did that have to do with him to begin with. That was until R.K. Maroon explained to him that he was the private detective out of everything in between in the scene. That was until Eddie Valiant had no time for it. And then R.K. Maroon tried to persuade him otherwise to understand, though, that try to follow Jessica Rabbit into Toontown to try to get some pictures. But Eddie Valiant was not happy with the whole scene until realizing the situation. He did not want to go to Toontown at all, and he told someone to find someone else to do the job because he ain't going. Then R.K. Maroon persuaded him to go to a different place to get pictures of Jessica Rabbit. And out of everything, when he was ignored, he wanted a drink, it looked like. And the only thing he answered and replied was it was going to cost him about $100 plus expense. He was not happy about the idea, and he said so was the job. And during that scene, he was persuaded enough to pay him about $100. And when he was about to have a drink, he looked down on the set. Then all the music instruments were playing in tune fashion. And then we looked out the window. We saw a familiar face. Yeah, that's right, Sonic. We saw Dumbo, but that was until he got so scared out of his mind, he hid underneath the table. R.K. Maroon persuaded him it was just Dumbo, and he said, I know who it is. That was until he explained to him he found him alone at Disney, left him half the cast of Fantasia. And he explained to him that they worked for peanuts. But that was until, in the end, he explained he don't work for peanuts. And he realized that he only gave him half the 50. And he would pay him the other 50, he would call the other 50 a carrot after he finished the job. And he realized that he's been hanging around rabbits too long as it is. Well, not necessarily, Sonic, but out of everything in between, when Eddie Valiant stepped out of the office, he ran into some familiar cartoon characters we all know today. And out of everything while he was exploring the studio, trying to leave, it led to where he ran into Hyacinth Hippo out of everything. But right as before he was about to leave the studio, he tried to get into the red car, tried to pay with the check, and the guy was like, what do you think I look like, a bank? And out of everything, he snuck from the back to the red car with the kids. One kid was trying to run to make it to the other side, so he helped him out of everything. And they asked him about a car, but he realized there was no need to get a car in the city, that we got the best public transportation system in the world, which was very true. Yeah, that is all true. Then that was until we were introduced to a sign on the red car station called Cloverleaf. But when he arrived home that day, he said his goodbyes to the kids, and the kids gave him the cigarettes. And out of everything in between, he even talked to the postman afterwards, and he asked him, what do you got in there? And realizing it was the usual bills. But before he was about to go inside to his house, to his office, he made a stop real quick to the bar. And at the time, though, he visited his old friends, and Earl was passed out on the table, and realizing the situation. But that was until he asked his friends, well, what was with Earl? And one of his friends looked like couldn't talk, so he used a billboard to write something, and he said, laid off. And realizing the situation, that Cloverleaf bought the red car, and during the cutbacks, he said, well, you got all that right, Sonic. And right as he was about to drink, that was until we were introduced to Eddie Valiant's girlfriend, Dolores. She asked him that tomorrow's Friday, and does everyone know what happens on Friday? But that was until he asked, was it the fish special? And realizing that he used one of the checks that the money that she gave him back in the till, that she was going to lose her job, until realizing the situation that he only had one left. And looking at the check, it was $50. She had a smile on her face, and she was wondering where's the rest. But then realizing the situation, he said it was only a snoop job away. And the only thing he asked for was her camera. His was at the shop. And yet, though, the only thing he said was that if he needed that she needed the other 50, he needed the camera. But when he got it, they were talking about their trip they had at Catalina. And they were knowing it was a good trip, they should do it again sometime. Then realizing the situation, she was asking, was the payment good? And she read the scrawling, knowing it was RK Maroon. And she was asking if it was Maroon Cartoons. Until one guy came into the work, upset, and was disrespecting him. Yeah, and out of everything else in between, he kept asking who was his client to the stars. Shooey Willie or Screwy Squirrel. And he kept making squirrel sounds. Dolores tried to stop him. The more he kept disrespecting Eddie Valiant, that led to a bigger problem. Out of everything in between, Sonic, you're right about that, but it led to where it was going too far, where he asked him about little Bo Peep, and she lost her sheep, and he was going to help her find them. But out of everything, while he was laughing, he kicked the bar stool, and the guy landed chin first, like right on his chin. And then that was until Eddie Valiant was so mad, he grabbed him right by his head, and the only thing I remembered was he was not happy at all. Yeah, but don't forget, Ash, the only thing he said was, "Get this straight, Real Bull. I don't work for Toons." And that was until he shoved the egg right in his mouth. And he was wondering what was his problem, until Dolores revealed that a Toon killed his brother. Dropped the piano on his head. But that was until we were introduced to the next scene at the time. Well, during that time, Sonic, we already know that we were introduced to a private club where he knocked on the door, and a Toon answered it, wanted the password, and he says, "Walt sent me." But when he opened the door, he walked right into a club filled with Toons, and you could see like Daffy Duck and Donald Duck having a piano war, going at it with one another, proving who was the master of the piano. But that was until we were introduced to... Yeah, Ash, we were introduced to another person in particular, and I believe that was Marvin Acme, the guy who owns Toontown, the gatekeeper. But out of everything, his jokes were so funny, but the Joy Buzzer was really a funny one to remember, and I believe that was a great scene, I'll tell you that. Well, Sonic, you got me there. But then that was until he asked one of the penguins for a drink. He said, "Gush on the rocks." And he says, "I mean ice." But when Daffy and Donald were having their piano war, that led to where a boxing glove hit him in the face. And then it was a great memory that none of us will never ever forget. Yeah, and I believe that was a great performance between those two, and they pulled out a great piano war. Anyways, what happened next was, when Eddie Valiant got his drink, Eddie looked at it and realized it was a green rock. But that was until one of the Toons asked him for a cigar or cigarettes, and it was Betty, one of the old school cartoon characters. But ever since then, that she still got it. But that was until we were about to be introduced to Rodger's wife, Jessica Rabbit. Yeah, of course that was true, Sonic, but out of everything in between, as time went on, when Jessica Rabbit had her performance, and I believe that was a great scene, and Eddie Valiant's jaw dropped, but luckily the jaw was put back in afterwards. And after her performance was all said and done, she went backstage, and so did Marvin Acme. But when he went backstage, it looks like he had a handful of flowers, and by the time he walked in, Eddie Valiant looked through the peephole of the door until he was introduced to the gorilla. Yeah, you got that right there, Ash. But that was until the gorilla was like, "What do you think you're doing, chump?" Until Eddie Valiant was like, "Who you calling a chump, chimp?" Then that got him so mad that he threw him out of the building until he sounded like an actual gorilla and was like, "Ooga booga!" You got that right there, Sonic. That's what he actually did. Now, anyways, out of everything else in between, well, Eddie Valiant was all said and done, but that was until he got out the camera and was taking pictures of Marvin Acme playing patty cake with Jessica Rabbit, but which drove Rodger so completely jealous it got him so upset at the time. But out of everything in between, Rodger was so sad that he just couldn't believe it when RK Maroon and Eddie Valiant were trying to cheer him up. But after when the pictures were shown to him, he got so upset that he just couldn't believe it. But that was until they were talking about the situation out of everything in between. Until he was given a drink at the time. Well, when he drinked up, that was until he started to sound like an actual train engine, like a train horn. Then every glass in the room exploded. RK Maroon had his ears covered, but Eddie Valiant did not. When that was until every glass in the room was being destroyed, and so was his drink. But yeah, that was until that led to where Rodger was so sad. RK Maroon tried to let him know that he'll find someone new from Mr. Valiant. But Eddie Valiant was trying to explain to him that he'll find someone else at the time. But Rodger got so completely mad, that was until he was losing his mind, until he explained that we're going to be happy again. Got that happy, PI, and then he ran right through the window. But that was until Eddie Valiant and RK Maroon thought he took it well, but boy were they wrong. He was right behind Acme storage at the Acme factory, and he was so sad he looked at all the photos he had of him and his wife, Jessica Rabbit. But that was until the very next day. It was still where Eddie Valiant went back home to his office until he was looking at photos of him and Dolores, until it led to a sadder moment when he looked at a photo of him and his brother having a good time at the beach. But that was until the very next day he was woken up by a detective. Well, you got me there, Ash. Out of everything in between, when the detective, Lieutenant Santino, realized the situation, that he just realized in the situation, if he wanted money so badly, why couldn't he just go to him? He realized in the situation he took a couple of lousy pictures out of everything in between. Oh yeah, Sonic. Real in the situation, he was just more like trying to tell him what happened. And he said, Marvin Acme, the rabbit, cacked him last night. But when Eddie Valiant realized the situation, that was until they headed straight towards the Acme factory. And when they arrived to the Acme factory, Eddie Valiant was looking right behind the wall, and he just realized he hasn't been this close to Toontown in a while. Until Yosemite Sam's biscuits were on fire, that he kept saying. Until he put it out with water, right at the puddle. So they both went inside and realized the situation, that detectives were taking photos from the crime scene. But when they all looked around, Eddie Valiant waited around at the time. Oh yeah, on the other hand, that was until Jessica Rabbit was being interviewed upstairs when the police officers were looking all at the Toon stuff. Portable black holes, dynamite, and a hammer with a boxing glove coming out of it at the time. Oh yeah, that is true. The detectives were laughing at Eddie Valiant, but they were making fun of him at the time when realizing the situation that there was the rope that Eddie Valiant was looking at, and it was hanging from the rabbit's glove. And after about the glove hanging from the rope, but that was until Jessica Rabbit came up to Eddie Valiant and then slapped him right in the face, and she told him, I hope you're proud of yourself and those pictures you took. But that was until the paramedics were trying to take Marvin Acme out of the Acme factory, but that was until they accidentally ran into a crate filled with boots, like Toon boots, and they were moving around, and that was until one of the chutes hit the paramedics right in the private area, which is not good, which more like in wrestling, a low blow. Then the joy buzzer fell, and then they got all the Toon shoes back in the crate where it belongs. And yet that was until Eddie Valiant saw the joy buzzer, and as he was about to grab it, until we were all introduced to Judge Doom, where a cane grabbed Eddie Valiant's hand and Judge Doom realized the situation that if the man was removing evidence from a scene of a crime. But that was until he said, no, Judge Doom, he was just picking it up for you. But that was until Judge Doom wanted the evidence, but he grabbed the hand, and it looks like he got, shocked in the process, which I think was pretty funny. Well, you got all that right, Sonic. But that was until Judge Doom realized the case where there was a toon that just walked out on him, and Eddie Valiant was trying to explain that he wasn't working for a toon, he was working for Arcane Maroon, and that Judge Doom was realizing the situation that he had a talk with Arcane Maroon, and that he's pointing out that the rabbit became quite agitated when the pictures were shown to him, which is Roger Rabbit, until he said one way or another him and his wife were going to be happy, which were very true as it is, but that was until he responded, until the lieutenant was like, shut your yap, Eddie, the man's in charge. And yet, though, on the other hand, that was until Judge Doom pointed out that Roger Rabbit wouldn't get too far, that his men will find them, until realizing they were just not men at all, they were actually weasels. And weasels were actually perfect for the job. They looked everywhere all over the town, they never found Roger at all. And Judge Doom was asking him, does Eddie Valiant know where the rabbit is? But yet, though, on the other hand, he gave him some responsible answers, he's like, have you tried Walamel? Kokomon? I hear Kokomon's pretty great this time of year. But Judge Doom did not like the answers, and he just realized that a man has been murdered by a toon, does he not get the point of the idea? But that was until the toon shoe was comforting Judge Doom's shoe, until he was pointing out that he had a lot on his mind, knowing that since he had Toontown under his jurisdiction, that his goal was to rein in on the insanity, and the only way to do that was to make toons respect of all. Yeah, you got all that right, Sonic, but out of everything in between, knowing Judge Doom, he grabbed the toon shoe and was about to demonstrate what's going to happen if he found Roger. But Eddie Valiant was asking the lieutenant, how did he become a judge? During the election that he had, and he bought the entire election. But that was until revealing the situation of what was inside the barrels. And that was until it led to where the lieutenant pointed out to Eddie Valiant there was never a way to kill a toon, but he said Doom found a way. Turbitine Prensetine Benzie. He calls it the dip, and that's what it is. It was called dip. And yet, though, on the other hand, when he was pointing out what would happen if he caught Roger Rabbit, but then that's when the toon shoe was destroyed, when he was placed inside the dip. And I was so sad to see about that and hear about it at the time. It's alright, Ash, you'll be okay. But anyways, out of everything in between, when the toon shoe was destroyed, it led to where the only thing left was his glove covered in red ink, trying to point out to him on how they handle things in Toontown. But it didn't scare Eddie Valiant at all. Well, you are right about that, Sonic. Well, on the other hand, when Eddie Valiant was returning to his office, that was until he saw a baby stroller and a woman with a lighter, and he thought she was burning her baby, but instead it was Baby Herman with a cigar. But that was until he wanted to talk to Valiant of what's going on. Then that was until they were talking about Rodger and what was going on, and he knew that Rodger couldn't do it, and that he was a dear friend of his. And yet, though, on the other hand, that was until Baby Herman gave a paper to Eddie Valiant, pointing out that the paper said Acme had an old will, out of everything, that the will was for them to lead them toons, and the will was the reason why he got taken out to begin with. And yet, out of everything, Eddie Valiant just wanted to go into his office, but that was until Baby Herman thought he was the one that got Rodger in trouble. He thought he would want to get him out, but Baby Herman wanted to pay him, but that was until Eddie Valiant pushed the stroller into Baby Herman's lady, but then his cigar fell out of his hand, and he was crying in his baby carrier like a baby. Then that was until Eddie Valiant went into his office after he had his drink, and then took a look at the paper and realized there was a will right there in his pocket. Yeah, you're right all about there, Sonic, but Eddie Valiant just wanted to let it all go. But that was until he just put his bed down and was about to go to sleep. That was until he turned around and just realized Roger Rabbit was in bed. But he wanted to know how he got into his office, and he said it was right through the mail slot. He just thought he was basically hiding inside, knowing he was wanted for murder. But the situation was, Eddie Valiant knew that if he talking to him would just get him arrested for, he'd probably get arrested for aiding and abetting. But yet, that was until Rodger, on the other hand, didn't know where his office was, so he didn't know. He asked everyone in the city, and they didn't know. But that was until the liquor store guy knew where he was. But that was until he actually, the Lincoln Tall guy knew where he was, but that was until he just was carried out by his ears, told him to leave, but instead, he got pushed back right into his office, and he admitted that he got completely jealous when he showed him the pictures of Jessica. So, she wasn't in her dressing room, so he wrote her a love letter. But he didn't use the old mirror trick routine. He just used a nice, clean up piece of paper he found. But that was until he admitted everything, so he ran straight to the office. And yet, though, on the other hand, that was until he admitted, like, so why come to him? But basically, he was the one that got the pictures of his wife, but that was until Rodger realized that he was the guy that helped all those tunes. And he realized if there was any trouble, he knew there would be a place to go. Valiant and Valiant. He was like, not anymore. But that was until the other scene got me upset. It was like he just didn't like the part where he was touching his brother's chair. And he was about to call the cops until Rodger walked right into a closet. He thought it was the front door. Actually, Sonic, what happened was Rodger walked right into the closet door, and Eddie Valiant was like, that's the closet. So he thought he was going to call the cops, but when he opened the closet door, Rodger was right there, and he handcuffed Eddie Valiant and Rodger to his arm. But realizing the situation, Eddie Valiant did not had keys to those cuffs. Well, on the other hand, you got me there, 412, but on the other hand, what happened next was when Rodger heard the siren, it was actually the Toon Patrol. The Weasels arrived. Rodger trying to hide. He tried to hide in the drawer, but they were still handcuffed together at the time. But the Weasels blasted their way through the door. But when they came in, Eddie Valiant was doing his laundry, it looked like. Yeah, during that time, the laundry was all about... Back then, there was no laundry machines, but he did his laundry upstairs in his kitchen. But the Weasel got stanked out of his mind, but when Rodger came out, he tried to hide him back in to try to make sure that the Weasel did not see him at all. Not necessarily Ash, but he knew what was going on. But that was until that led to where, like, he told his friends to search the place, but when he realized that he knew the rabbit was there, that led to where he pointed a gun at his face until he just put a bar of soap in his mouth and he fell over, which led to the ultimate problem. He got so mad at his Weasel family members when they were laughing, but then that was until he left Eddie Valiant a warning. And then Rodger was safe at that time. Yeah, you got me there. But out of everything else in between, that led to where, right as they went to go see Dolores to get the cuffs off, they went to a private room, it looked like a ruck gut room, to try to use a saw to get the handcuffs off. But Rodger easily took the handcuff out at any time. But it was so funny, where Rodger ran right into the other side of the room until he showed a photo to Dolores about Mr. Acme's will. But then that was until that led to where R.K. Maroon wanted to get his hands on Toontown, but it was a hunch to him, it looked like. Yeah, that is all true there, but he asked Dolores if he could stay there for a couple of days, but that was until he went back to the office, and then that was until he ran right into Jessica Rabbit and wanted to know more about the situation. And she explained to him that he wanted her to get caught. That was until R.K. Maroon did threaten Jessica Rabbit that if she didn't go through with those pictures, that Rodger would never work in this town again, and that she would do anything for her husband, more than anything. Yeah, that is all true right there, Sonic, but out of everything in between, that his pants fell down when Dolores walked in, but that was until she gave Eddie Valiant a blow kiss to his cheek. That was until Dolores got completely upset and that he got caught with his pants down, that he got caught. Then he tried to explain to her that that's not all she was trying to do, but she just wanted to get her husband back to make sure that he was safe. But then Dolores explained everything, that if Mr. Acme's will didn't show up at Toontown tonight, at midnight tonight, that would be until Cloverleaf's going to own Toontown. And yet, though, on the other hand, when they were talking about it, that was until they heard a noise from the bar. They realized it was Rodger. He was making so much noise until the weasels listened in, and they called for the judge. But Rodger was trying to give everyone a good time in the bar. The more he got them laughing, then the more the record player glitched out, hit himself in the head with those plates, until Eddie grabbed him by his ears and tossed him back in the rut gut room to find out why he did all that. The only thing part of the explanation was that the reason why he did it, because he was a toon. Toons are supposed to make people laugh. But out of everything, they heard the alarm went off during their conversation, but then that was until Judge Doom arrived, and he was looking for the rabbit, until he smelled a record player playing in the background. First he heard it, but then when he smelled it, he realized Rodger was here. Well, you got all that right there, Sonic, but out of everything in between, until he tried the old shave and a haircut trick, when he kept banging on things, and then Rodger was going crazy, and then when he tapped it one last time with a shave and a haircut, Rodger came right through the wall and doing the trademark and dance until he got caught. But yet, though, when he got caught in the process, it didn't look too well when Eddie Valiant was discovered by the weasels. That was until Judge Doom knew that it was over. He was calling for the dip. But when he opened it up, Rodger tried to fight it. Then Eddie Valiant realized Rodger should have a drink before going down. Oh yeah, don't forget all that there, Ash, because let's just not forget, Eddie Valiant knew what was going to happen, so he asked him about the drink, so he wanted him to cut the trail, but Rodger didn't want a drink, but instead he did reverse psychology. But when Rodger drank it, the same thing happened at R.K. Maroon's office. Well, you got all that right there, Sonic, but what happened next was, right as all of that was happening, Rodger literally destroyed all the bottles in the bar, but then that was until Eddie Valiant fought off the entire weasels all by himself single-handedly and saved Rodger and spilled the dip. Yeah, he did. But out of everything in between, they got out of the bar, but then that was until it led to where they were going to escape in the Toon Patrol car, but there was no key until, thanks to a help from a talking cab named Benny. Benny helped them out, and then Rodger got in, but when Eddie Valiant got out of the car, that was until he opened the back door, and Benny was there. Oh yeah, you got all that right there. But what happened next was, right as Benny was driving off with Eddie Valiant and Rodger, trying to escape the weasels, just got out of the bar and just realized what was going on. But out of everything in between, the chase was on. As they were chasing him, Benny was talking trash. Yeah, you got all that right there, Sonic, but out of everything in between, while Benny was talking too much trash, that led to where the weasels were trying to shoot Rodger's head off. Until the chase was still going on, and then police bikes were on the scene, and the chase was on. But that was until they were right behind them. Yeah, but that was until the weasels got back, and then led to where the weasels thought they had him, but then Benny was like, pulled the lever, and they pointed out to which one. When it thought they were going to ram him, then Eddie Valiant pulled the lever, and then they went up. Yeah, they did, Ash. But most of all, though, on the other hand, when they went up, they went past the weasels, but the weasels accidentally crashed into the patrol bikes. But when they escaped, that led to the movie theater, where it played a classic cartoon of Goofy working out at the time. Oh yeah, let's not forget about all that. But during the time when Rodger was pulled by his ears again, Rodger was asking Eddie why was he always just much of a sourpuss. But that was until Eddie revealed to him why. A tune killed his brother. But then, after explaining everything, Rodger was in tears, so they forgave each other afterwards. Yeah, they did. But out of everything in between, after all that forgiveness, Dolores walked in, explained everything. But Rodger was very respectful at the time. But he hated the news, I'll give him that. But when they left the movie theater, it was something else at the time. Oh yeah, Ash, let's just not forget that when Rodger left the movie theater, that was until Eddie Valiant realized that R.K. Maroon was the connection during the whole thing. And that was until they drove all the way in to R.K. Maroon Studios to find out more about the situation of what's going on. Yeah, that's right. But when they pulled in, it led to where things led to bad to worse. Right as they pulled in, Rodger was happy and more confident to do so. Then he got taken out with a frying pan to his head. Yeah, but out of everything in between, when Rodger was taken out, R.K. Maroon had a gun to protect himself. But that was until Eddie Valiant snuck right in through the production area, and he said the famous word from Bugs Bunny. What's up, Doc? But yet at the time, though, Ash, that was until R.K. Maroon was freaked out. He wanted to know about the will and everything else. But he thought Eddie Valiant was by himself, but he said, who said I was here by myself? Yeah, you got all that right there, Sonic, but out of everything in between, Rodger was put right in the trunk of a car done by his wife, Jessica Rabbit. I think she was just doing that to protect him. But then that led to where, at the time, Rodger was just knocked out and was just trying to be protected by his wife. Until she looked up at the window and found out what was going on. And yet, that was until when R.K. Maroon asked again about the will. But that was until he knocked the drink out of Eddie Valiant's hands. Then Eddie Valiant went for the squirter drink, but when he looked at it again, but that was until he thought it was a joke, and then he just squirted him right in the face with it. Well, not only that, though, Ash, he hit him right in the face, and then took his gun out of his hand, and then wanted to know more about the situation about Cloverleaf. And then afterwards, he put his necktie on the machine that projects cartoons to find out more what's going on. Well, yeah, not only that, though, Sonic, but he did, try to find out more about information. But when R.K. Maroon spilled his guts, he was going to reveal more of what's going on until he didn't want to see Toons destroyed, until he was going to give the answer, but that was until he got shot in the back twice. Then Eddie Valiant ducked and rolled at the time, but then he looked out the window, and R.K. Maroon was dead. But when he looked out the window, he saw that Jessica Rabbit was down there, and then Jessica Rabbit was in her car driving, and the chase was on. And not only that, though, but when Jessica Rabbit drove right into Toontown through the tunnel, Eddie Valiant knew that he wasn't going to go in there alone, so he went back in his glove compartment in his car, and he found his old trademark Toon gun. But that was until he shot a glass bottle in the air with the Toon gun. Yeah, not only that, though, Sonic, but when he shot the Toon gun in the air, one of the bullets went flying and hit the bottle. Then the chase was on in Toontown. They were singing their song, and Eddie Valiant crashed his car right into the middle of something in Toontown. Oh yeah, on the other hand, what happened next in Toontown, Eddie Valiant looked in Jessica Rabbit's car, and she was not there. And that was until when Jessica Rabbit was upstairs. Eddie Valiant called for the elevator, and Droopy said, "Going up, sir." And out of everything in between, they went up, he went into the room, but when he opened the door, he thought it was Jessica Rabbit, but no, it wasn't. It was a different cartoon character, and she tried to chase him until he went into a bathroom. Well, not only that, though, Ash, but when he went into the bathroom, there was no flooring, and the sign said it was out of order. And then he fell right to the ground, and he caught himself on the flagpole until Tweety grabbed his fingers and played Three Little Piggies. And that was until he did the old, this little piggy went to market, this little piggy stayed home. And the more he did the chant, and then that was until Eddie Valiant started falling. And I believe that was a funny moment right there. Yeah, that was funny. But at the time, though, that was until he met up with Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny, where realizing he was jumping without a parachute, but he was actually falling. But that was until Bugs Bunny had a spare, but when he gave it to him, it wasn't a spare parachute, it was a spare tire. But then he got caught by the girl that looked like Jessica Rabbit. But that was until she kissed him on the cheek, and then she was try to get him, but then that was until he pulled the white lines from the road, and then she crashed right into the wall. And that got her right into a trap. The old tune trick, just like Wile E. Coyote. Yeah, that was funny at the time. But most of all, on the other hand, he looked in the alleyway for Jessica Rabbit, but then that was until he sneezed and his shadow said Gesundheit. He was like, thank you. But that was until Jessica Rabbit was right behind him with a gun. And then she shot the gun. After she dropped it, she admitted that it was Judge Doom who pulled the trigger. That she followed him to the studio, and that she was too late. And Judge Doom was running, because he knew that he did it. Yeah, you got all that right there. But when Judge Doom literally just ran, that was until Eddie Valiant shot the tune bullets, and they didn't know which way he went, and they were dum-dums. They looked in the trunk, but Rodger wasn't there. Then she admitted what happened, and they were going to take Eddie Valiant's car, but instead, it was Rodger. He was driving the car himself. But that was until the Weasel showed up and made things worse for Eddie Valiant and Jessica Rabbit. They were going to take Gingerbread Lane, but that was until Eddie Valiant used his thumb and called for Benny. Well, that's good to know, Sonic. You got all that right. But when Benny was called, he drove Eddie Valiant and Jessica Rabbit out of there when they were trying to leave Toontown. That was until Judge Doom tipped over the barrel filled with dip. And Benny's been dipped, and that was until he hit a lamppost up ahead. And that was true. And after he did, Judge Doom admitted everything, and the Weasel showed up and put him in his car, and they took them straight to the Acme factory. And yet, though, after they did, Ash, they were trying to search for the will, but that was until Jessica Rabbit had a bear trap, and one of the Weasels were taken out. And as Rodger pulled out of the Toontown tunnel, Benny was explaining what happened, and that Judge Doom took them to the Acme factory. Well, you got all that right there, Sonic. When Rodger was about to drive, Benny drove all the way to the Acme factory, and then that was until Judge Doom was revealing all of his plans. Then when they pulled out of the Acme factory, Rodger was telling Benny to go for the cops, and he was going to save his wife, and he got a gun in his hand, and that was until that led to where Rodger tried to get in, but the window was locked, but when he put his hand in, he fell right through the toilet. Yeah, but after he did, Judge Doom put down a plate, and he revealed there was dip inside the van, and all the plans that they had planned, that he was going to try to get rid of Toontown for good, and turn it into an actual freeway for people to actually go through motels, gas stations, and all beautiful restaurants. But he wanted to get rid of Toontown after all of that. But that was until he had a lot planned out. But that was until Rodger showed up with a gun. Yeah, you're all right about all that. But what happened next was, that led to where Rodger was trying to save his wife, but the more he got sidetracked, one of the Weasels were on top of the bricks, and they're trying to cut the rope, and the only thing that was around him was a ton of bricks, and the bricks hit him right on his head, and there was stars, like right above his head, and he was ready for the roll once again, it looked like. And yet, though, out of everything else, Ash, but most of all, though, they had the lovebirds tied up. That was until they were going to try to destroy Toontown, but instead, their plans were backfired until Judge Doom fell and realized that the weasels were laughing, and that was until Judge Doom made a great idea for Eddie Valiant to get all the weasels laughing. And yet, though, you're right about that, but what happened next was the more the gun was pointed at Eddie Valiant's face, but that was until it led to where he pulled the lever, and which led to where Eddie Valiant was playing Roger Rabbit's own theme song, it looked like. But then that's where he kept doing a lot of funny stuff to get the weasels laughing, and it was a good song for them afterwards. Yeah, you got all that right there, Ash, but what happened next was when the weasels were starting to laugh, one of them were dying, they were knocking dead, and Rodger, realizing that they were being knocked dead while they were laughing. And the more Eddie did his song and dance, that was until he got hit in the head with it looked more like a lamp or something. It was actually more of a vase, Sonic. When he got hit in the head, one of the weasels were distracted, and then he kicked him, and he landed right in the dip. While they were all laughing, one of them died in the car, and the other squirted the water gun into the Rodger and Jessica. Then one of them fell in, and he pulled the lever once again. Yeah, he did do all that, but that led to bad to worse when Eddie Valiant saved Jessica Rabbit and Rodger at the same time, but that was until Judge Doom came in from behind, and the fight was on between the two ever since. Eddie Valiant tried every toon trick, but none of them never worked. Well, actually, Ash, one of them almost did, which was the magnet, but that was until he got stuck in a barrel with the magnet, until Judge Doom actually had a steamroller, and he was going to try to run over Eddie Valiant with it, but that was until Eddie Valiant saw one of the portable black holes, and he used it on the magnet, and he saved himself afterwards, and he kicked Judge Doom right off the steamroller. Yeah, you got all that right there, Sonic, but when they were fighting, that was until the steamroller ran over the desk, and then afterwards, Eddie Valiant tried to use a weapon, but realizing the situation, it was like super glue. But when he hit the steamroller, he was getting squeezed right in, and Eddie saved Rodger again. Yeah, but not only that, though, but not only did he save Rodger, but he saved Jessica as well. Then, when Judge Doom was getting crushed by the steamroller, he was flat as a pancake. But when they looked, they realized he was a toon. And that at the time, though, he realized that Lane Freeway's situation would be done by a toon. And not only that, he did say not just any toon. And then he used the air filter, and he was blown back up like a balloon. And the eyeballs came out, and underneath those eyes was the same toon that killed his brother. Remember me, Eddie? When I killed your brother, I talk just like this! Whoa, nice one, Cole. But anyways, what happened next was, that was until Eddie tried to run, but Judge Doom was no match, because Judge Doom had toon powers until he launched Eddie Valiant on the other side, and then turned on the machine once again, and then he hit him with a golden anvil from his gloves, and then Eddie Valiant was launched to the other side of the Acme factory. And yet after all of that, then he had a golden chainsaw, like he was gonna cut Eddie Valiant in half. But the rest of the situation, the chainsaw cut through the blades like nothing, all through that metal, until Eddie Valiant saw the desk with the hammer with the boxing glove. So he moved out of the way immediately after that. And yet, though, out of all of that, he rolled out of the way of the blades, and he got the hammer, and then the boxing glove came out of the hammer until it hit the dip machine, and all the dip came out and landed right onto Doom, Judge Doom. And then everyone thought that was it for the end for Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit, but all the dip was coming out of the machine. But then Judge Doom was done. He was melting, and he lost. And yet, though, on the other hand, though, Cole, not only that, but the machine, the car, was driving straight into Jessica Rabbit and Rodger, and then Eddie Valiant ran right to the other side and pushed the button and saved them, moved to the other side. Then the car hit the wall of Toontown. Yeah, not only that, though, but when the wall was hit Then the car was destroyed in Toontown, and I believe that was a great rescue. And then Rodger and Jessica were still hanging, knowing there was dip everywhere on the ground. And then Eddie Valiant got rid of all the dip with the fire hydrants. And after he did all that, Rodger and Jessica was saved, and so was Toontown in the end. Yep, that's exactly what happened right there, Ash. So what happened next was, after when Rodger and Jessica were pulled down, and then Benny pulled in with the police, and of course Dolores, and everyone from Toontown was shocked and stunned that they can't believe what they were seeing. And you got all that right there, Sonic. Everyone looked and saw like a rubber mask of some sort of Judge Doom and the rope, and it was revealed that Judge Doom killed Marvin Acme and Arcane Maroon and Eddie Valiant's brother. But that was until all the Toons were gathered around and talking about what he would have really looked like. And yet, on the other hand, what happened next was that led to where the ink that was sprayed on by Arcane Maroon was disappearing, reappearing ink. But that was until Baby Herman realized in the situation that if the will doesn't show up, then Toontown would be completely done by a wrecking ball. But the love letter Rodger wrote was for Jessica, and right as he read it, it wasn't just a love letter, it was the will, and Toontown was saved that day. You got all that right there, Ash, but what happened next was Rodger and Eddie Valiant were about to shake hands, but until Eddie Valiant got stunned by a joy buzzer. And that was until everyone thought that he didn't lose his sense of humor afterwards. And after that, Sonic, they were like, does that answer your question? And Eddie Valiant kissed Rodger Rabbit. And everyone from Toontown headed back into Toontown, and the police and staff told him to leave, and nothing to see there until we ran into a familiar face. That's right, it was Porky Pig. Until he said the trademark, that's all, folks. And I believe that was the greatest movie ever created at the time. This movie was amazing. I give it 10 out of 10. Me too, Sonic. Me too, guys. And I have to say, this was the best review that any of us had ever done. And this was the first review, and I believe that this is going to be a great time in 2020.
If Cold 412 and the others think keeping me here on this prison off the coast of the island would any escape like I did last time, then he's got another thing coming.